Michael for inviting me to come here. When I saw the lineup, as a futurist, I could not be more excited, because usually when I go and talk, we always have these conversations about possible futures, right? We've got future of robotics, we have quantum computing, we have cognitive computing and wearables and space travel. I mean, the lineup to me was just absolutely amazing. And for myself, as I was prepping for this, what I wanted to do is say, well, what could I bring? What could I bring to this conversation? And so I figured what I'd do today is talk to you a little bit about just kind of what I do. You know, I love the tagline for this Compute Midwest, Imagine the Future. It's kind of my day job, which is kind of awesome. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what that's like, how I go about doing it, and then also start talking to you about some of the things that I am seeing. And of course, it will be not surprising to most of you that the things that I'm seeing actually dovetail into all of the absolutely fabulous speakers that are going to be following me today. And then, so we'll talk about what that's like. We need to get my presentation up here, because there's some great pictures. There's also great jokes. So get ready for the jokes. So laugh at the jokes. I was telling my buddy Alex, laugh at all the jokes. Here comes the guy in black to take care of it all. There we go. There we go. Thank you very much. Getting the kinks out early. It is early. All right, so I'm going to set my timer so that I am respectful of my fellow presenters. Okay, so let's get started. So my first slide, if you read really, really closely, says that I work for a large company and we have a whole lot of lawyers. Okay, I did that. Okay, good. Great. Okay, who am I? As I said, I'm Brian David Johnson. I'm a futurist at the Intel Corporation. It's my job to look 10 to 15 years out and model how people will interact with technology. What will it feel like to be a human and live in the future? Now, my job is very pragmatic. I'm a principal engineer at the company, and so I provide my colleagues with a spec that says, this is what the chips will need to do 10 years from now. And I'm judged not only on the clarity of that vision, this is what it'll feel like to live 10 to 15 years in the future, but I'm also judged on the actionability. So can my colleagues now take this information and begin to build today? And that's so much of what I do is, so how do we come out, imagine a future that we could actually build, and then say, what are the steps that we can start to take today to get to that future? Now, you can pretty much tell everything you need to know about me by looking at this picture. Now, I know this is a pretty geeky conference, which is pretty awesome, but if you need help, I will point out, look here. Look closely. For those who can't tell, this, ladies and gentlemen, is a calculator watch, thus proving that I am a nerd. I love everything science. I love everything science fiction. I am an unabashed geek. And I get to bring all of these things together in the work that I do. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what that process is like. So to start imagining the future, you have to have a vision for the future. Right? Nothing great was ever built by human beings that was not imagined first. So again, you need to imagine the future. So let's start getting an image for what the future might look like. Now, this is what we're normally shown when people show us pictures of the future. Right? We see this in advertising, we see this in the movies, right? You usually have a really good-looking guy or good-looking gal. You've usually got a really cool, streamlined piece of technology, and they're usually in like a really kind of awesome, super hip apartment. I have to tell you, I hate this picture. Because when I look at this picture, I ask myself, where are the baby toys? I look at this and I ask myself, where are the pillows? You know, where are the family photos? Right? If we're really going about doing the actual work of imagining the future, when I look at this, I ask myself, where's the stuff that makes us comfortable? Where's the stuff that makes us diverse? That's the wonderful thing about human beings, is we're incredibly diverse. We're wildly complicated. We have different beliefs, we have different cultures, we have different religions, and that's actually what makes us awesome, is that we're complicated. So when I look at this, at best, I find it intellectually dishonest. At worst, I find it insulting. I find it insulting to the awesomeness of humanity because we're imposing this type of future. Now, I can also say that I hate this picture because this picture comes from Intel, which, as you can imagine, doesn't make me a lot of friends in the marketing department. Now, on my next slide, I have a picture of what the future is actually going to look like. Who would like to see it? Oh, you're all so polite. There we go. There we got some people going. All right, so I got to tell you. So as a futurist, I spent a lot of time talking to schools. And I was once giving a talk like this, sort of getting things set up, and I was in front of 600 undergraduate engineering students, also known as the hardest audience on Earth. And so I'm there, I'm Intel's Futurist, we're going to talk about the future, and I say, who wants to see this? It's completely silent. Except for one kid way up in the back goes, sure. I was like, I come all the way out here, and all I get is, sure. Okay, get ready. It's early, I know, but you're going to see the future. Now, I have to warn you, you cannot unsee what I'm about to tell you. I just want to warn you, I mean, if anybody needs to get up and leave, that's fine, because this day literally will mark in the timeline of your life. There is before this day and after this day. Literally, you will tell your children and grandchildren, it was so early and I was having my coffee and there's this like weird bald futurist up there and he showed me the future and I could not unsee it. Okay? Everybody ready? All right, hold on to your neighbor. Bam! Right? Now, by the way, pound for pound, if we're talking about the future of technology, there's more technology in this picture than in the previous picture. Right? She's got a laptop, a smartphone, a connected TV, even a connected picture frame. But the reason why I like this is actually from some ethnographic field research that we did recently, is it's real. Right? It's messy. It's complicated. It's filled with stuff. She's got stuff on the chest of drawers. The chest of drawers are open. She's in her bare feet. Right? This is actually what I love about it, is that this is real. This is the type of future that I want to design for, and these are the type of futures that I imagine, because these are futures that are designed for real people. And these are futures that are designed to embrace the complexity of human beings. Also, I would like to live in this future. I don't want to live in this future because this future looks like prison. I want to live in this future, right? She actually has a pillow. I think you can probably see it. She has a pillow that says, chill out. So this is the basis, and this would be one of my challenges to you, is as you imagine these futures, as you start to see all of these sort of amazing presenters today, and even probably these sometimes more amazing conversations you will have in the lobby, and by the way, they're buying the first round tonight. That's even better. So imagine, as you imagine this future, imagine it for the real complexity. Imagine it for real people. Okay, how do we do that? So real quick, the work that I do is actually something called Futurecasting. What Futurecasting is a mix of social science, of technical research, of economic and trend data, and also some global interviews. I even use a little bit of science fiction based on science fact to kind of model what it'll feel like to live in the future. So as you can imagine, you know, any good story is about people. So a good science fiction story based on science fact, still about people. And it gives you this tool to imagine what it would feel like, the sort of ethical and cultural and human implications of living in the future. But that's sort of what I do. If you remember nothing else about my talk today, remember that I do not make predictions. I'm not that type of futurist. Invariably, somebody's going to come up and ask me some sort of question. Before, I would say they would ask me about the Kansas City Royals and where they're going to win, and it's usually about the Intel stock price. I don't know. For me, it's not about being right. And this is very important when you do this sort of work of imagining the future. You don't want to be the person who says, I was right. I said this thing and I was right. You see these people on TV all the time. Usually if somebody's sort of saying, I was right, they're trying to sell you something. I think it is our job to get it right. To do this work, to imagine the future, and actually do it so that we create products, we create technologies that actually touch the lives of people and fit beautifully into their lives. And that's really the goal of what we're trying to do. Now, where is everything going? So this graphic encapsulates an idea that completely changed how I viewed the future. What it says is as we approach the year 2020, the size of meaningful computational power, the size of the chip that goes into all of our devices, as we approach the year 2020, the size of meaningful computational power approaches 0. Right now, we're at 14 nanometers in size. As we look out to 2020, we approach 5 nanometers. 5 nanometers is 12 atoms across. So what this means is we can turn anything into a computer. We could turn this stage into a computer. We could turn my jacket into a computer. We could even turn my body into a computer. And this fundamentally changes the questions that we need to ask ourselves about the technologies and the businesses that we are building. Because for decades, we had to ask ourselves, can we do something? Can we take a desktop and put it onto somebody's lap? Can we take a laptop and make it small enough to fit into somebody's pocket or their pocketbook with a smartphone or a tablet? It was, can we do it? But when you have the size of meaningful computational power approaching 0, we can turn anything into a computer. So we no longer have to ask ourselves, can we do it? We have to ask ourselves, what? What do we want to do? And why? Why do we want to do it? And what I would put forth to you is to say that the reason why we are doing this is to actually touch the lives of people and make their lives better. Let's make them healthier, happier, more productive, more entertained, but that should be our goal as we ask ourselves the what and the why. Now, I have to tell you, I absolutely love this graphic. Can you see the woman in the 1960s? She's got a bouffant hairdo. Can you see the dude in the 1970s? He's got bell-bottom pants. Can anybody guess who is in the year 2010? Somebody whispered Steve Jobs, thus proving that you are smarter than I am. I've had this graphic for a very, very long time. I've stood in front of thousands and tens of thousands of people, and all of a sudden I realized it was Steve Jobs, because somebody went, that's Steve Jobs. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is Steve Jobs. So I called the graphics people, and I was like, did you know that that's Steve Jobs that's in my thing? And they're like, it took you like forever to figure that out. And then they did what they love to do. They went Futurist, and they hung up. Okay, let's talk about where things are going. So as compute moves to 0, something really interesting happens as we pass 2020, move to 2024. So today we live in a world of devices. You hear a lot of conversations about devices. We have laptops, we have desktops, we have smartphones, we have tablets, we have all these different devices, and all of our world, and everybody has these conversations about, is it this device, is it that device, and which device is it going to be? We talk a lot about devices. But as you have the size of meaningful computational power approach 0, something really, really interesting happens. All of these devices disappear. Okay, just so you know, all the money went into that. That's it. Like, literally, it's all downhill from here. The presentation, all the money has now been spent. So I'm going to show it to you again. As we approach the year 2020, something really interesting happens to these devices. All of the devices disappear. I know, right? Awesome. Worth every penny. Now, why this is important, why would I tell this to you, is because as we pass 2020, we pass a fulcrum point where the majority of our computational power no longer resides in these devices, but it resides in the world around us. So we will have smart buildings, we will have smart cars, we will have smart cities. Literally, you have more computational power outside of all of these devices than you have inside of the devices themselves. Now, this doesn't mean that these devices become less important. Actually, these devices become more important because they become the windows through which we tap into all of that intelligence. It's how we take advantage of it all. But how we architect that, how we think about it, the capabilities, and a lot of the presenters that are going to talk today will talk about the amazing capabilities that will happen when this computational power literally spreads out throughout our world. But those devices become just as important. Those interfaces for how you interact with it become important. They become the windows through which we tap into all of that power. But essentially what it means is that we will be living inside a massive computer. You know, we have all this computational power around us, and why that's really awesome is because once you turn something into a computer, you can optimize it. You can optimize your building and optimize your car and optimize your house. And the thing is, you don't just have to optimize it for like efficiency or productivity. Everybody always wants to optimize for productivity. I don't want my home optimized for productivity. Let's be clear. When I'm at home, I want to be inefficient. I want to be non-productive. Anybody comes and says, we're going to make the home of the future and you're going to be completely productive. That sounds a little bit like hell, to tell you the truth. I don't know about you, but so for me, you can start optimizing for different things. Like what if you optimized, say, your business, your office building? What if you optimize it on a Monday, not for productivity and efficiency, but to make you laugh? Because Mondays are really hard. And then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you could optimize it for productivity. And then on Friday, you optimize it to get sort of jacked up about the weekend. It became an incredibly social place because you were figuring out what you were going to do. This goes back to the what and why of what I said earlier, is that if we can optimize, what are we optimizing for? And it's a decision that we need to make. And it's actually a really good question for you to ask yourself and ask your colleagues, is when they're coming up with businesses, you're coming up with new products, you're coming up with ideas, to ask yourself, what are you optimizing for? Because you don't just have to optimize for efficiency or productivity. You can optimize for a whole host of other things, again, that taps into the wonderful diversity of humanity. The next area that I want to talk about is big data. Now, I'm sure it's going to come up a lot today. And actually, my presenters today are the ones who are actually building the future of big data. So they probably won't do this, but it's a fun game you can play with people when they come and ask you about big data. They're like, ooh, the age of big data is coming. And you go, okay, well, tell me about big data. And they'll tell you it's big. And be nice, right? Be nice. Say, great, that's awesome. So I want to know what it's going to be like. Like, what do I need to build? You know, what's it going to be like to live in this age of big data? And they'll go, well, there'll be a lot of data. Usually people haven't sort of put themselves forward and thought, okay, well, what will it feel like to be a human? And how I've been describing it is that for most of us, it'll feel like data has a life of its own. Because it will. Data will have a secret life. You'll have algorithms talking to algorithms, machines talking to machines, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be absolutely amazing. It will be able to do all the things that I mentioned, make us more healthy and happier and productive and more efficient, all that stuff. But what I keep reminding people is in this age of big data and in this secret life of data, you always have to remember that all of this data, all of this intelligence is meaningless until it comes back and touches the lives of people. That everything we do in technology, everything we do in business, it's always about people. Technology is about people. Education is about people. Everything we do is about people. So as I start to imagine this secret life of data, what I put to myself, what I put to my colleagues is to say, okay, we have all of this information, what are we going to do with it, and how is it going to affect people's lives? Oh, and by the way, and let's not just use it to sell more books or more movies. Let's use it to help out that 78-year-old woman in Daytona, Florida, who has heart disease and diabetes. Let's use it for the kid with autism who lives in Southern California and is super smart, but just needs a little bit of help. Because it would be an absolute shame to take all of this intelligence and just use it to sell more stuff. The final piece that I've been seeing and talking about and that has been driving me is this notion of fear. And part of it is my own fault, right? I go around and talk about things like the secret life of data, and I talk about, you know, the ghost of computing, and people get really freaked out. And when I talk to people, and most of the conversations that I get, they're fear-based conversations. The future freaks a lot of people out. And this is important, because the thing about fear is our brains on fear look really, really different than when we feel healthy and happy and safe. When your brain is on fear, it can pretty much make 3 decisions: fight, flight, or freeze. That's it. One of the neurologists that I work with put it, I think, best, said, Brian, fear makes you stupid. You make bad purchase decisions, you make bad education decisions, you make bad life decisions when you are frightened. And it turns out that most of the stuff, when it comes to this future of fear, when it comes to technology, it's actually not a technology problem. Here, I'll tell you a thing. This is kind of fun. Let me make sure I have enough time. So, Okay, yeah, I do. So Time magazine a few years ago did a thing on what are people really frightened of and what should be people frightened of. So as you can imagine, they did a big graph, right? And so on the bottom of the graph, it said, this is what people should be frightened of. And on this side of the graph, it said, this is what people are frightened of, right? So the upper left up there was, this is what people were super frightened of, but shouldn't be frightened of. And down here in the lower corner is what nobody was frightened of and we all should be super, super scared of. Okay, so imagine up in the upper left-hand corner, right, the things that everybody was freaked out about, but nobody should be freaked out about. What do you think was number one? Public speaking, that's funny. No, it's actually kind of cool. It's cool. You get to like meet people. Like, I don't get to meet this many people. It's like the best party ever. No, airline travel. Airline travel, like one of the safest things that you can do. But more importantly, number two, guess what number two was? Sharks. And living in Kansas City, you'll understand, sharks? Now, down here in the lower corner, I love being in a place where you're not on a coast because I love that joke. So in the lower corner, what do you think was the thing that nobody was frightened of but everybody should be scared to hell of? The thing that will kill 50% of us, heart disease. Most of the conversations that I have around fear have nothing to do with technology. They have everything to do with information, control, and again, understanding that we are making these technologies for real people and that we are fitting them into their lives, and we need to understand that people have privacy concerns, security concerns, and that we need to address those. And I think we're in the midst of a really interesting time where we are addressing those. They're not figured out yet. But we need to talk about it. It actually needs to be a conversation because the technology doesn't get to decide. Remember that the technology doesn't get to decide what it's going to do. Humans get to decide. We're the ones who build it. Now, the reason why I loved the tagline for today is because I believe it couldn't be more true. We are in a really interesting time. We live in a time where our science and our technology have progressed to the point where what we build is only constrained by the limits of our imagination. Think about that for a second. As we go out and we try to imagine the future and build the future, the thing that is holding us back, it's not our science, it's not our technology, I would argue it's not our business, it's not our networks. The thing that is holding us back is our imaginations. It is our inability to imagine a far more awesome future than we have today. I teach in a lot of MBA programs and I go and I lecture to a lot of students, and that's what I tell them. That as you think about this, we need to do our math, we need to do our work, don't get me wrong, but the thing that is probably the most undervalued in what we do is our imagination. Our ability to come up with these absolutely amazing futures, because once we do that, we have the science and we have the technology that's out there that will allow us to do it. It is, I believe, an unprecedented point in time. I can even tell you personally, as a futurist, I come from this background of long-term scenario planning, of design, of doing this work. And the fact that I have actually gone through 2 development cycles, I've been doing this for about 20 years, I've been into Intel for about 13, to actually come up with wild, crazy ideas, literally like Douglas Rushkoff, who's a media theorist, and he's a troublemaker, basically. He calls me a hack or a virus inside of these large companies. Like it's my job to make them think I'm crazy. Like it really is my job for people to go, what? I have lived through 2 cycles where I've gone in and been the crazy guy in the room and then shipped that technology. And to live in a time where you can actually come up with a vision for the future where people think you are certifiably insane, and then 10 years later to be able to send them to Best Buy so they can buy it is crazy. But we're in the midst of that. And it's not just being a futurist at a company like Intel. We're all in the midst of that. We've seen companies sprout up in the middle of nowhere and get sold and become hugely popular. That the thing that holds us back is being able to imagine that future. And I think the docket of speakers today will give you an incredible amount of information, amount of fuel for your imagination. But that's one of the things I also want to encourage you to do is don't hold yourself back, because you're only going to hamstring yourself and the future. That you have the ability to build it. And the challenge is to imagine, and imagine to the point that it's crazy. Because here's the thing about crazy ideas. I love crazy ideas. I love stupid ideas. Really stupid ideas, right? Because what normally happens is you have a really crazy idea or you have a really stupid idea, and it's only crazy until somebody realizes it's genius. When you're sitting around with somebody and somebody goes, man, that's just, wait a minute. You know what we could do with this? And that's where it happens. But you've got to dare yourself to be crazy. You've got to dare yourself to come up with a lot of crazy, stupid ideas and push your imagination. Because it is incredibly important. In the work that I do as a futurist, I take my job extraordinarily serious. I realize that the work that I do and the platform that I have been afforded means that if I get it right, that I can meaningfully touch the lives of almost everybody on the planet. And I would tell you that we are living in a time where that's possible for pretty much everybody. So that is an incredible responsibility. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm an optimist, right? I think that the future is going to be awesome. Why do I think the future is going to be awesome? Because the future is built every day by the actions of people. The future doesn't just happen. It's not some accident. The future is built every day by the actions of people. And I'm an optimist because I say, well, if the future is built every day by the actions of people, why don't we all go build an awesome future together? Let's not build a future that sucks. Let's do that. So if we're going to do that, and if it is on us, right, you can't punt. Like, if we're the ones who are going to do it, what are we going to do? So I traveled out and started talking to colleagues of mine to say, well, what do we do? If we're the ones who build the future, how do we do that? And I went around and talked to different folks in governments and militaries and educational institutions, and it turns out this question, how do we change the future, really pissed a lot of people off. Like, they would say to me, what makes you think you get to make my future? I was like, whoa. And they're like, well, what makes Intel think that it gets to make my future? I was like, whoa, that's not what I mean at all. My idea is that if the future is built every day by people, by companies, by organizations, by churches, okay, what do we do? Like, what are the steps that we need to take? And I was in London talking to a collaborator and a buddy of mine, Cory Doctorow, who's a science fiction author and an activist, and we were arguing about this, and then we hit upon the idea. The how do you change the future is you change the story that people tell themselves about the future that they will live in. Incredibly simple. But if you can change the story that people tell themselves about the future that they will live in, they will make different decisions. They will not be frightened. They will make different policy decisions. They will make different education decisions. That actually changing that story is the linchpin for everything. And to do that, you, number one, need to have a vision for the future. Right? It is what you are here to do today. You are here to imagine the future. But then more importantly, the next step is for you to go and talk to people about it. Because how you change the future is to not only have a vision, but is to go and share it with people. And say to them, here's my vision for the future. By the way, this is the future that I want. By the way, this future scares the heck out of me. And have a conversation about it. Because it's in that conversation is how you actually change the story. And I've got to tell you, this only speaks to the absolute sheer awesomeness of this conference. So I sat down this morning, I came in, I flew in late last night. I'm a little blurry-eyed, I'm getting my coffee. I sit down at a table, and I look across the table, and I meet Kate Wisdom. Kate? Where are you, Kate? There's Kate. So I'm like, she's like, hi. And I'm like, hey, good morning. How's it going? And I said, hey, what are you working on? And she said, yeah, I go to the University of Kansas. I'm a bioengineering graduate, bioengineering graduate student. And I know a lot about tissues, and I know a lot about tissues, but really what I'm trying to do is make a UI interface so that I can manipulate tissues and manipulate nerves. This was my first conversation of the day. Awesome! And so I will give you all the same advice I gave Kate. Have that awesome vision of the future, because let's have that, please, and go talk to people about it. Because if you come to somebody, I guarantee you, if you've got this vision for the future and you go to somebody and you say, here's my vision for the future, sometimes you might get a little bit of skepticism, but I can pretty much guarantee you, because you all showed up today, you care about the future. And so if you go to somebody and say, here's what I want to build, you will probably find somebody who goes, oh, that's awesome, let's do that. As you're going about today and as you're listening to the presenters and as you're going out and having these conversations with people, I'm going to ask you to do something. So I'm going to ask you to not only sort of raise the bar up, have these crazy ideas, dare to go to somebody and tell them that idea, but you have a greater responsibility than that. And that is, because you are here, you're now implicated in the future. So if the future is built every day by the actions of people, you are the ones who are going to build the future. Not only all of us, the ones who will be up here on stage, but there's a very good chance that you are more important than we are, because you're the ones who are going to build the future. You will fan out through your businesses, through your communities, through your churches, through your schools. You will build the future. And it's up to you what you will do. You can decide about your own future, the future of your family, the future of your community, your school, your state, the country, even the world. But you have to make that decision, and you have to own the fact that you will build the future. And I would ask you, humbly, as you go out and do that, not only make amazing products, not only come up with awesome businesses that will make you and all your associates rich, come up with crazy ideas, but with everything you do, try to make the lives of people better. Because if we can set the bar that high, you can do amazing things. Now, my final slide takes a real quick story. When I was coming up in business, my first job was as a speechwriter. I used to write speeches for my different executives. This was before I came to Intel. And one of the first jobs was writing for this one executive who, in every single presentation I wrote for him, I had to include a picture of dogs playing poker. I was young. I didn't ask why. I said, yes, sir. So in every presentation I did, there was a picture of dogs playing poker. If there was a screen, there was a picture of dogs playing poker. If there was a podium, there was a picture of dogs playing poker. I know this picture really well, right? The little dog, the bulldog that's got the card in his toe. Finally, I got up the guts. He was leaving and I was leaving for a different company. I finally said, sir, why did we have to include pictures of dogs playing poker in every single presentation? And he kind of smiled at me and said, Brian, people love pictures of dogs playing poker. Why wouldn't you include pictures of dogs playing poker in every single presentation you give? And he was right. So I have taken on the mantle of this. I've taken on the tradition, but in every single presentation I show, I don't have pictures of dogs playing poker. What I do have are pictures of animals using technology. The longer you look at this, the more freaked out you're going to get. And with that, I will say thank you very much. Have a great day.